So far, what we've looked at is linting. So we've configured some ESLint rules, installed all of the relevant packages, enforced some coding standards and styles. And then what we also have done is with Husky, run some pre-commit checks in our code to GitHub, which then basically does all of these checks, which runs tests, lints the code, and builds it. And then also we have enforced commit lint with conventional commits to make sure our commit messages are conforming to the relevant standards. So that is all complete. What we now need to do is implement CircleCI. So let's go ahead and look at the docs. So if we go into CircleCI, and here we click on the link, and now you can see here it says build anything fast, the CI/CD platform for the AI future. So now what we want to do is start building for free, and we want to sign up, and you can sign up with your GitHub provider and so on. I am signing up on this account for the first time, so let's click continue. And all you need to do is put in your email and password, and I will be right back. So now I've created my account, I can essentially fill in all of these steps. I'm a software engineer, set up a project. It's just myself basically, and then I'm just going to say let's go. And now what we can do is where can we find your code? So essentially we've uploaded our code to GitHub. So this is what we will be clicking. And if you have GitLab or Bitbucket, again, that is up to you. And now you can install and authorize all of your repositories or just the one. I'm just going to select only selected repositories. And the repository I want is React Component Library. So let me type that in. And now you can see this is the one. So let me click on it and then install and authorize. And I just need to put in my password and confirm. So once you've done all your configurations with CircleCI with the SSH keys, then what will happen is you should see something like this, which is a dashboard. So now all you need to do is verify your email and so on. But essentially, if we go into projects, you will have a project in here. So essentially, this is where all of your pipelines would run. So what we want to do is if you click into this project, and you can see all of the pipelines that are running and so on. And let me just refresh. As you can see here, it says now that your configuration and triggers are set up, commit a change to your code and source to trigger your first pipeline. You'll see it in here once you do. So essentially, if you look in the docs over here, it will tell you how to kind of connect and configure everything together in your app. So you could essentially connect your code and so on with GitHub, and it gives you all of the information. But what we want to do is we want to click on getting started, and in here we want to essentially know how to be able to run pipelines. So if we go into introduction CircleCI migration, if we scroll down, this is how we would migrate anything across. But what we essentially want to do is do the basics. So let's do test, and we want to do automated testing. And now you can see here it's given us scripts on how we could do all of the information that we want to do. But in our case, what we want to do is we want to essentially run the tests, we want to run the linter, run build, and then we want to do a release and then also deploy our code as well to npm. So now what we want to do is we want to create our own automations. We need to create a YAML file first of all, and that is going to be done in our code. So let's go back into our code. At the top level here, we need to create a new folder, and this folder is going to be called .circleci. And in CircleCI, we need to create a new YAML file called config.yaml. So this is where we would define all of our CircleCI automation configs in here. So there's a few things we need to do. First one, so if we go back in here, and we have jobs, we need to define jobs, but we also need to define the version. So what I want to do is find the actual docs first of all. So now we're on the web app introduction. You can see all of this information. If you want to read further, you can do, but essentially we need to find the quick starter guide for getting started. So if we find this one here, which is Node Quick Start, so now this is the step-by-step instructions on what we can do with our configurations with YAML. So first of all, we need to specify a version. So every CircleCI config YAML starts with a version key. So this is the latest version key. So again, let's go ahead and do that. So copy that and paste it in. And then a second step was use the node orb. So this is like a Docker image. If you've used Docker before, it's the same thing. It's a an orb is basically like an image in Docker. So it contains a set of pre-packaged CircleCI configurations. You can easily install Node and its package managers. So this is the latest one we need to install. So again, let's paste that one in. Then we need to define jobs. So it says here create jobs. So it says build and test the app. What we can do is copy this, but what I want to do is define the jobs in here myself. The job we want to do is to lint the code. So let's just define the jobs now. And if you press enter, you can see here is GitHub Copilot is suggesting a job, but what we want to do is do lint code. So lint underscore code like that. And then if we use this, what happens is it has an executor, and that executor is node slash default. So if you hover over it, it says the name of the executor to use defined via the top level executors map. So we essentially want to use node default in here. The next thing we can do is we can also add a description, which is lint code. And you can add quotations in there, but I'm just going to leave it as it is. And then after that, what we do is we have steps. So the first step here is checkout, which essentially is a special step used to check out our source code to the configured path, defaults to working directory. The reason for this special step is because it is more of a helper function designed to make sure that the checking out code, because it is more of a helper function designed to make checking out code easy for you. If you require doing Git over HTTPS, you should not use this step as it configures Git to check out over SSH. So essentially we need this step, so we'll keep that in. Then we want to install the node packages. So let's go ahead and install node packages like that. And you can also specify further, so you could use the package manager and the working directory, but we don't want to use that for now. So it will be check out node install packages, and then what we want to do is run the command. So what we can do here is just do run like that, and essentially what this run will do, it'll take in a name which is lint code, and also the command which is npm run lint like that. What we can also do, if we go in our package JSON, you can see the commands in here. So this is where it will take the commands from. So npm run lint will essentially trigger ESLint like that. But what we want to do is run lint fix. So let's copy this and add that in as well here at the end. So what we've done essentially is configured all of the steps to run the linter and fixing the linter in here. So what will happen then is it will run lint fix after installing npm packages up here. So check out node install packages, and then it will run our linter in here. So that is our first job defined. Now what we want to do is define more jobs, and then later we look at using a workflow to run these jobs in a sequence. So let's go ahead and define our next job, which essentially is going to be copied from Husky. So in our pre-commit hooks, we do a few checks in here. We do npm run test, npm run lint, and npm run build. So these are the three steps we want to do. So we can do that as well. So let's go ahead. We've done the linter. Now what we want to do is run the test. So let's create a new job. So this job is going to be called run underscore tests like this. And what we can do essentially is copy the same steps as above, which is having the executor as node slash default, the description, steps. So we again need to install the packages and so on. And we also want to then run the test. And then once we've done that, we also want to run build. So again, following the same theme, we need to define the job for build, which is essentially installing everything and then running the build. But this here will need to be run in a sequence. So first of all, what we want to do is lint the code and fix any changes or any ESLint errors. Then we want to run the test. Once the tests have passed, then we want to run build on it. And then what we want to do eventually is run a release and then also deploy our code to npm. So deploying our dist folder to npm, and then in another application, we can then use this entire React component library in there. So let me just save this for now. And then what we want to do is if we commit our code, then we want to go into our browser in our CircleCI project, this is the project here. If we click into it, then we want to create jobs. So these are the jobs I've done testing earlier. And what we essentially want to do is create a new workflow, and then the jobs will run from there. So what we will do, if we go into the docs once again, we've created our job. So that's step 3, which is essentially jobs. And you could have put them all in one job, or you could separate them like we have done. We will look at this one here, which is persist to workspace, which is optimizing the build process. We'll look at that later on, but I just want to break it down into simple, smaller chunks for now. So here it says if we scroll down, we want to deploy the app, and you can skip that step as well because we've done option A, which is build and test the app. And then what we want to do next is create a workflow. So if you see here, it says a workflow is a set of rules defining a collection of jobs and their run order. So what happens is this build test deploy here, if we command F that, if we go up to the top, there's not any jobs for that because what happens is this is the name of the workflow. So now what we want to do, this workflow below has the jobs in here. So the job is we want to deploy, which requires build and test at the start. So first job we do is build and test, which is essentially the job we have created up here. So we're bringing in the jobs into our workflow, and then we're saying to our workflow to run these jobs basically. So what we'll do is we'll do that now. So let me go back in the code, and underneath let's do workflow, and this workflow is going to be named, and you can name it whatever you want, but this is going to be build app. This is what I'm going to name it as. This is the job, and underneath here we want to grab these jobs, so link code, run tests, and build in here. So let's go ahead and do that. So in build app we need jobs. So again, we need to define the jobs, and the jobs essentially are going to be the link code and the run tests and the build. So what will happen is when we run this workflow, they will run all at the same time. So let's save this, and we need to just commit our changes, and then the pipeline will trigger. So git add git commit -m, and this is going to be CI, and we are going to have integrate our first workflow. So if we go back in here in our CircleCI, what happens is if we go into pipelines, this was the workflow I created in my testing environment. So we need to ignore that one. And the name of this workflow, if you go back in here, is called build app. What this build app will do is it will link the code, run the test, and also build. And these will all run at the same time. So let's commit these changes. And then this will run all of our pre-commit checks in Husky. So let's close that down. You can see it's got an error in here, what's going on in here. And we've checked the node version, and it's the wrong node version. So make sure you're using the correct node version. And this is using MVMU's version 18. So let's go ahead and use that. And then we will need to, again, commit the changes. So if you want to check your git status, let's go ahead and do that. So git status. So we've added our CircleCI config in there. Now we just need to commit the changes that we specified earlier, which will then trigger the pre-commit hooks we've discussed in the previous video about the Husky commands. So now you can see this has gone to empty here, and now we just need to sync changes. So all you will run in the terminal is git push. Now this will push the changes, but what we want to do is this pipeline will trigger now. So let's refresh the page, and you can see here it says running, and all 3 commands in here or jobs are running at the same time. Now what we essentially want to do is run them sequentially. So first of all, let's just analyze it, and you can see here we have 3 passes, 3 ticks. So it's still saying running in here. Let's see if we refresh the page what happens. You can see now here it says success. It took 18 seconds. You can also trigger the rerun of the workflow, and there's other options in here. So you can copy the pipeline ID and go in project settings. But what we want to do is if we go into here, we can click into build app. So let's do that.
And then you can see here, this is how long everything took for each single job. So let's click into run test and see what exactly happened in run test. First of all, it's spun up the environment. It does all of these checks in here. Then it prepares environment variables. Then it checks out your code. So this is the checkout command that we had defined in our jobs. So let's go back in our jobs. This is the checkout here. And then the next one will be node install packages and then the npm command that we specify for the job itself. So checking package JSON, let's go ahead in that one. You can essentially click show more if you want to see it. And then determining lock file, restoring cache, then we go into installing the npm packages and then we're saving the cache. So if you think about the cache, we can reuse that in our jobs. So we will do that later on. Then we remove temporary links and then we finally run the test. And you can see here, it runs our test that we have defined in our page.test.tsx in here. So that is essentially what happens in the job itself. You can go back into the workflow, so you just click on build app. You can do the same checks in here, and again, what will happen is this will tell you all of the information we've looked at. We also have here at the bottom, we have 20 pipelines a day. This is on the free tier I'm on, and also 5 pipelines a day. It says here some more information which you can click and learn more about. Let's close that off. So we now go into our project. We have our first successful workflow running. What we want to do is we first of all want to lint the code, then we want to run the test, and then we want to do the build. So let's go and fix that in our config. So first of all, we want to link code, then int run test. There's a, if we expand it, so we do colon, and then essentially it's the requires keyword, which is requires link code. Now we want to do the same for build, but build requires the run tests like that. So I also want to delete this and call this build because it's the same as the workflow name as well. So now we save that. What will happen is it will run sequentially now. So dependent on this job completing, run test will run, and dependent on run test completing, build will run. So let's quickly do that. So git add and then git commit, and this commit is CI run jobs sequentially in a sequence. So let's press enter and commit them changes, and then all we need to do is once the pre-commit hooks have worked, then we just need to push our changes. So git push, press enter, and now going back in here, a new job should trigger. So let's refresh the page. Now you can see it's running, but if we open it up, now you can see only link code is running. So when link code completes, run test should run. When run test completes, then build will run. So let's just wait for that. So now you can see the green tick mark, which means it's complete. Then run test will complete. So this should take another 14 seconds or 13 seconds, however long it takes. And then after that, what will happen is the build will run as well. So now you can see run test has complete and then build will run as well. So now you can see that's our pipeline complete. So we've got everything working correctly in there. And also, if we go into our repository up here and press refresh, you can see now it's also connected to our GitHub app. And you can see here it says success 1 minute ago. That's the latest pipeline. So if we click on it, it basically shows you all of these checks that have passed. So we can further click into the details, which will then send us into the workflow itself. But yeah, let's go ahead and press back. And this is our code that we've committed the changes for. So all we want to do now is the build process is working. So everything is building correctly. Now, what we want to do is go in to npm, run a release. So you can create a release in here, because what we've done is we use standard version to create a release. And then once we've done the release, what we also want to do is then deploy our code to npm. So let's go ahead and do that. So going back in our code in here, we also need to define a few new jobs. So let's go ahead and do that. And the first job is going to be run release. So run underscore release is essentially running the release. So again, we need to check out node install packages and then npm run release. Let's go in our package JSON And you can see this is the release here, which is releasing with standard version. So all we need to do is double check we have standard version installed in our dev dependencies as well, which we have done over here. So let's close that down. We're running the release, and then what we also want to do is essentially deploy our code to npm. So what we want to do is do that job. So publish underscore to npm. So again, this does npm publish, but again, what we need to do is we need to publish our own npm login details. So this is where we need to add an npm token. So this token will connect to npm, and then this they will basically know that this is where we need to publish our component library. But first of all, we need to save this, and then we need to first of all add these jobs into the workflow. So let's go ahead and do that. So run release is essentially required by build, and then also publish to npm is required by run release. So now we have this workflow and everything complete. We first of all need to make sure release is being run, and then once the release has been run, then we need to publish to npm. So there will be some errors, but what I want to do is I want to add everything and run the pipeline to see what actually happens. So this run jobs is essentially ci added release and npm jobs. So let's commit that. It's going to do our pre-commit checks, and then obviously this we need to publish and push everything to GitHub. So in our terminal, you can see here everything's worked. The build has completed in here. We have our dist folder with our relevant files that we need. So in here, what I also want to do is we want to check if we are actually logged into npm, and the way to do that is with the command. So npm who am I. So let's check who am I, and I should be logged into another account. So let's go ahead and check, and now you can see here it says this is my account. So what we want to do is go into npm itself, and we want to log into a new account. So let's create a new account. So I'll show you how to do that next.